All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. As always, today we're going to talk about National League Rookie of the Year in baseball. I'll throw in some NL MVP thoughts as well. So I continue my campaign passionately for Francisco Lindor. And then we will jump into the tennis. We will talk about the men's side today, some of the quarter prices, and then finish up with the outright. But let's start with Jackson Merrill, Drew, and Paul Skenes, and a couple of other guys who I don't think are dead yet. Right now, Jackson Merrill for NL Roy is minus 165 after he hit a walk-off bomb off of Edwin Diaz on Sunday. Paul Skenes is plus 120, Jackson Churio 60 to 1, Tyler Fitzgerald 66 to 1, and thus there ends, I think, the list of people who can realistically win. Where do you sit on the Merrill Skenes divide, which is very much like in a reference I've used a lot lately, Jack and Locke on the island in Lost, where it is a philosophical divide a little bit among bettors, perhaps among voters as well. Where do you sit?
Yeah, I find this absolutely fascinating, and I mostly want to hear your thoughts, so I'm not going to wax poetic here for too long. I will just say that you always worry about this if you have skin on a pitcher in the Rookie of the Year market, who is a huge favorite, because the everyday players just have an opportunity to accumulate so much more in terms of player impact. And, it's a long season, and pitchers, even if they are flashing in the months of May and June, even into July, don't always, kind of carry that success through to the end of the year. And if you're a young pitcher in particular, you're going to have some kid gloves if your team's not winning, which the Pirates are not. So there are, this was alarm bells blaring now going on 2 weeks. And, I don't have huge skin in the Paul Skenes game, but I definitely didn't think, considering he was sort of the only story that was generating any buzz in the world of baseball throughout the entire months of June and July. I did not think we would be here today, where this is now the Jackson Merrill show, but we are. And I don't really know what Paul Skenes can do to turn this momentum around. And I think, there does feel like a hair of a disconnect between the market price and and which I think is, kind of correctly being shaped by smart players like yourself, versus the voters may still kind of want to memorialize the story of Skenes, which was such an important part of the overall arc of the baseball season, where they may, this may be a split vote that comes down to, some of the, some of the second and third place type of stuff. So, I don't know. I mean, I definitely didn't see this coming. But by the time it was on us, it was like, okay, no, this is a real threat, because Jackson Merrill is very good and he is playing every day. And that's always going to be the reality in this market.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating award. And I think that it's often people get tricked a little bit into relying too much on precedent for who is going to win an award. And I always say that, like, precedent is a guide. It's not a hard and fast rule. People break precedent all the time. Naz Reid didn't fit in 20 precedent for Sixth Man of the Year. Marcus Smart for Defensive Player of the Year, he didn't fit in 20 precedent. Joe Flacco for Comeback Player of the Year didn't fit in 20 precedent. You have to treat every race on its merits, and people don't have to beat the people who won the award in the past. They just have to beat the other people in their field in the given year. But with this award, I think there is an incredible precedent. And that's 2 years ago when Spencer Strider went head-to-head with Michael Harris, and we got like the ultimate showdown between a pitcher and a hitter, and it was so perfect as a comparison point because they literally played for the same team. Spencer Strider was 4.9 Fangraphs WAR. Michael Harris was 4.8. Strider he had a 2.67 ERA. He had an insane amount. He had 202 strikeouts in only 131 innings. Michael Harris was, I think, 19 home runs, 20 steals. And I thought that just on merit how I would have voted, and I needed Harris to win, so it was fine that it turned out the way that I wouldn't have voted. Spencer Strider that year had a 1.83 FIP. He was 14 Ks per nine. He was basically per inning. He's basically the best pitcher in the sport. And Harris was great, but Harris was having like a very good all-star season. But listening to the discourse around the award, became very clear that Harris was going to win because he plays every day. And this is, I think maybe one day voters will get past this, but it's like the idea that you play every day. Like a starting pitcher can deliver 20 plate appearances of value in one start. Like that's just how it works. But voters just don't seem to absorb this. And that's why pitchers in this award are just facing this insane, unfair fight. And that's why hitters just constantly win the award. Like in terms of throughout the COVID season when Devin Williams won, and throw out Shohei Ohtani because he's obviously a unique case. Like since 2014, outside of those cases, the only pitcher who has won was Michael Fulmer in 2016, who was, just in a really down year. And then before that, previous winners like, Jacob deGrom, who's one of the greatest pitchers of all time, Jose Fernandez, who had a legendary season. It's very, very difficult to win if you're a pitcher. And I think what history has taught us is that, and I think this still holds true today, is that if it is a close race between a pitcher and a hitter, the tiebreak goes to the hitter because they play every day, which I think is just completely illogical. But in terms of betting these awards, that's like we just have to deal with the illogical nature of how people are voting on it. And as a result, I think Merrill, his market price is fair right now. And Skenes, I think some people have left Skenes for dead. I don't think he's drawing dead by any means, but I just think that Merrill, who is, in front of Skenes in F WAR, he's behind in B WAR, but the fact that he is playing every day, and the fact also that, like, I think if the season ended today, Merrill would win. Because Merrill has this, and I think this is fair and reasonable. And I'm not saying that Skenes definitely deserves to win over Merrill, but Merrill has this distinguishing factor in his case, which is that he's been basically the most clutch hitter in all of baseball, and that should count for a lot. Like his performance in ninth innings and tie games and everything has been completely insane. So that is the separator for Merrill. And I think the issue for Skenes is that I think he'll lose a vote held today, and his case is only likely to get worse because he is on this. It hasn't been formally declared as an innings limit, but they've talked about wanting to limit his workload. He was absolutely rolling in his last start against the Reds, and they pulled him after 87 pitches. And so I think that there is some chance that he just gets shut down entirely. I think what is more likely is that they put him on the Garrett Crochet plan where he's pitching 4 or 5 innings. And the issue is when he's losing right now, it's going to be very hard for him to flip the race. Because one, Merrill is very good, and very good hitters can slump, but it seems improbable that Merrill is going to have a month where he hits 190, which might be what it takes for Skenes to win, given that Skenes isn't going to be going out there and throwing, 7 scoreless with 14 Ks, because he's just not going to have the rope to do that. So Merrill probably doesn't need to hit 190, but he probably has to hit 220. So I think that right now it's in Merrill's court. We'll talk about a couple of the other guys, but what do you think of that and that idea that Skenes is just facing this unfair fight?
I think this is a very sobering take, and I tend to agree. If the Pirates were at all in the mix still for a wild card spot, if they were not losing baseball games, I think maybe we're having a pretty different discussion, because I don't know if they're taking this approach with him. But it seems like the die is cast, and we are running out of time. I know there's still a month of the season left, which is a lot, but yeah, I mean, they're right now 5th, projected to finish last in the NL Central, well out of wild card contention. And I could see them ultimately just flat out shutting him down at some point this month, or in the next month, and it wouldn't surprise me. So it does feel like if you haven't already jumped ship, it's still maybe a hair of time left, even though it's going to be amazing, because again, I feel like all of the month of June and July it was the Paul Skenes show, and there was nothing else really cooking at all in the world of baseball, and yet here we are.
Yep, no, I think that's fair. I think what Skenes needs to do, and it's so unfair that he has to do this, I think his ERA needs to start with a 1. If his ERA starts with a 1, then it starts to get a little absurd that he would lose the award. Right now, he's got a 2.16 ERA. The one good thing about not pitching deeper is that, if you go third time through the order, that's when your performance declines. If he's just going out there throwing flames for 5 innings at a time, then maybe he can get his ERA below 2. And if that's coupled with Merrill, not going berserk, then I think he can win. I don't think Skenes is dead by any means. I think right now it's Merrill is 60 to 65%. I think Skenes is around 30%. And then I think the rest of the market, and I think both of these guys, even though it's not inspiring, I don't think either of them are going to win. But Jackson Churio is 60 to 1. Tyler Fitzgerald is 66 to 1. I think there are still worlds where each of those guys can win, even if they are 5% or less probability, going off what I just said, where Tyler Fitzgerald, his issue is that he's only played 69 games and Merrill has played 127. Now, the good thing for him is that he's accumulated almost as much WAR as Jackson Merrill, despite playing almost 60 games fewer than him. His slash line is insane. He's batting 298, 353 on base percentage, 567 slugging, 14 homers, 16 steals. Good chance to go 20-20, 20-25. And if he catches Merrill in WAR, and it's right now the gap on Fangraphs is 3.9 Merrill, 3.2 Fitzgerald. It's a bit closer by Baseball Reference's version. If he goes past Merrill in WAR, having played like 60 games less than him, then it gets a little bit absurd to vote for Merrill over Fitzgerald. And I think that there is, more than a 2% chance that happens. And, the odds of 67 to 1, I think there's a little bit of meat on the Fitzgerald bone. And then Jackson Churio as well, who I think it's going to be a bit uphill for him, but he's been insane the past 2 months. And if he continues on that trajectory, then there are worlds too where he could potentially catch Jackson Merrill in WAR. Again, similar gap to Fitzgerald. He has a chance if Churio he's at 15 home runs, 18 steals right now. If he was to end up with 23, 24 homers and 27, 28 steals and be the face of the Brewers as they surge to the 1 seed potentially, then I think there's a path for him. So, look, I think that both of those guys, it's unlikely that they win, but, they're 60 and 66 to 1 when I think they should be more like 20, 25 to 1.
Okay, well, that's fun. Everything else I'm following in baseball feels pretty uninteresting right now. I'm assuming that you would agree the other 5 awards are pretty well in the bag at this point.
I think Sale with health and with not completely imploding, and he had a bit of a shaky start last time out, but he was able to get through unscathed. I think that Sale should somewhat, not skate, but he's certainly in the box seat to win NL Cy Young. Tariq Skubal just needs to pitch like 10 more innings, and then I think he's home for AL Cy Young. Aaron Judge with health will win AL MVP. AL Rookie of the Year is still a bit up in the air. I think Colton has been anointed a little bit too quickly. His case isn't great, and he would.
I don't like to hear that.
Yeah, I think he's still going to win. I think he's greater than 50% certainly, but he shouldn't be. Like right now, he's like minus 600. I think that's insane. And we'll talk about American League Rookie of the Year tomorrow, and then my passion project, my new Nazarene, my new Kobe White, is Francisco Lindor in the National League MVP market, where right now the odds are fluctuating a little bit. Lindor's price most places about plus 500. Now, look, I think Shohei Ohtani is the rightful favorite by margin. I think he is north of an 80% chance to win the award. But there is a path for Lindor, and I think that the path is that the Mets, I think they have to make the playoffs. I think Shohei Ohtani has to not get 50 home runs and 50 steals. If he goes 50-50, that's probably a wrap. But if Lindor, who right now leads Shohei by like 0.2, 0.3 F-WAR, if he gets that to like closer to a 1 WAR lead and the Mets make the playoffs, people really, if it's close and there's an out, I think between voting for a DH or voting for a Gold Glove shortstop who is going to play all 162 games out there in the field, if Lindor drags the Mets to the playoffs, I think that aspect, and what I think maybe some people don't know, is that on the ballot that you get when you vote for these awards, the first criteria for MVP is the voters are asked to assess a player's value based on their offense and defense. That's the first thing that voters see. Shohei Ohtani doesn't play defense, and he doesn't pitch this year. And I think that voters accept that it is just kind of easier to hit and put up big numbers if you never have to worry about playing the field. And right now, Shohei's just offensive stats compared to Lindor's, with the fact that right now, as we're recording, the Mets are 2.5 games out of the playoffs. Like Shohei, there are 30 voters. Right now, Shohei would beat Lindor like 28-2 or something. He would win in a landslide. But if the Mets make the playoffs and Lindor continues to play really well, then I think that the WAR thing, the defense thing, the fact as well that like Lindor is going to be looked at like he's Russell Westbrook on the 2017 Thunder, dragging this team into the playoffs, while Shohei is like Kevin Durant on the Warriors, where it's like, all right, he's this DH on this super team. What does it really matter? I think there is a path for Lindor, but I think Shohei, I think it's like Shohei 85%, Lindor 15%, but there's a path for Lindor, or just a narrow one.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, my numbers right now say Mets to make the playoffs, little under 20%. So that checks out. I guess just in general, the defense has always scared me about holding him an Ohtani ticket this year. Certainly if he was contributing as a pitcher, that would be very different. It was pretty impressive seeing him enter the 40-40 club the way he did. And it felt at that moment like it was kind of over, but I'm not going to count that one until we ultimately to see if the Mets make it or not. Otherwise, give my Orioles any hope of running down the Yankees, or should I just end the dream?
I wouldn't end the dream. They're like one game back or something.
Nobody's projecting them as better than like 30% chance to win the division now, which I can't believe, but
their issue is they have a harder schedule than the Yankees. I think they have the advantage in the tiebreak, and they play the Yankees 3 more times. So, a lot of this stuff is going to come down to the final week of the season. Like if the Orioles can be in striking distance to the Yankees by that point. The Yankees also, like, they still have some frailties, and they're being carried right now by Aaron Judge being the greatest hitter that we've ever seen. It's presumably that will maybe not go away entirely, but at least cool off where he doesn't homer every single day. But yeah, there are some of these races will come down to the last week. The Mets have this massive series against Atlanta, which is as high leverage as it gets the final week of the season. If they're still in range there, then that will be pretty exciting. I think the Orioles, 30% seems about right. They just don't have any starting pitching. They've completely butchered the past 2 deadlines. Yeah. Like, just go out and get an ace or a number 2 start. I guess they got Zach Eflin and he's hurt, but still, like, they should have done more, particularly last season, because that team could have won the World Series. And they're like, no, we've got all these young guys and we're going to be contending forever. It's like, well, maybe not. You play in the same division as the Yankees. Like, you probably need to go all in right now when you have a really good team.
But anyway. The trade deadline is haunting me. I'm 100% with you.
Yep. All right, we'll continue to check in on the baseball, but for the time being, draft like a champion using the RotoWorld Fantasy Football Draft Guide, now available exclusively through a new partnership with Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. Get a Fantasy Life Plus subscription and receive the RotoWorld Draft Guide plus fantasy DFS and betting tools to help you dominate all season long. Use promo code ROTO10 for 10% off. Go to fantasylife.com/RotoWorld to learn more. All right, US Open men's draw. It is underway. So we're going to talk about these quarter prices. Some of these will have moved a little bit just with the action that is taking place on Monday, but amongst the favorites, it shouldn't have moved too much. Let's go by these one by one, Drew, and start off with quarter 1, which I think has the most glaring misprice. Yannick Sinner, why is he minus 125 to win the quarter? Should he not be more aggressively favored?
So, I think there is always going to be a lingering fear that Medvedev can get the better of him on a given day. Medvedev being in his quarter was a bad draw for Yannick Sinner. There is a clear top 4 right now in men's tennis, and Medvedev is the 5th. in general, his best tennis has been played on hard courts, and his only slam win came here. And he is his in particular, his ability to just be an absolute returning savant was enough to get him the win last year against a heavily favored Carlos Alcaraz in the semifinals. He beat Djokovic here as a relatively significant dog in a final several years ago. And I think there is still some glimmer of hope in a lot of the Medvedev believers that he's going to be able to push Sinner. And I think in general, like there's a coolness on Sinner with some of the sort of circumstantial stuff floating around about him and his, just in general, him beating the drug charges that came around Indian Wells time. The numbers would say that Sinner is clearly the best player in this draw, and it's not close. And I think the fear, if any, is that Sinner is going to have, a little bit of a more difficult time performing to the level we saw at the Australian Open, because he has shown you a lot of signs of fatigue over the balance of this summer. Weird illnesses, weird absences. And then all of that was put to rest, I think, to a degree with his title run in Cincinnati, but didn't really have to do much to get that championship. And I think in general, if he makes a little bit of a mess of the early stages of this tournament, then, he could be fatigued to the tune of Medvedev getting the better of him. Last year, Sinner, I had a pretty significant position on him to win his quarter, loses before he even gets to the quarterfinal against Alexander Zverev. That was rough. And I think in general, like, he has never realized his potential on these courts for some reason. And so I think there is still just a little bit of a glimmer of doubt. That said, the rest of that quarter, Tommy Paul, maybe your third choice, I don't disagree with that, but I don't think he has a realistic chance to be either Sinner or Medvedev. Tsitsipas is so far out of form. It's amazing that, he's even being given the 10-1 type of respect. Similarly, Felix Auger-Aliassime has played fine, but has still shown no ability to beat the absolute top level players. And I think in general, like Sinner going up against some of the Americans on his run to a second week here and potentially being not the crowd darling and crowd favorite, there are people who have questions about, how he will handle that mentally. I'm dying to know. I cannot wait to see it. Particularly against a player like Mickelson, who's huge, huge hometown kind of a favorite, and then Tommy Paul, who's playing some of the best tennis of any American right now. So it'll be a fun quarter to watch, but I agree with you. I think minus 125 should be closer to about minus 160 for me, and really the only threat that I see in this quarter is Mr. Daniel Medvedev.
Someone who lost a lot of money on Sinner, was it 2 years ago, when he completely melted in his quarterfinal against Alcaraz. The man has some demons that I'm not sure entirely were tamed by winning the Australian Open, given that didn't have the hardest go of it in the end. But yeah, wouldn't be surprised if he does melt, but it's always, I think that you should naturally regress to a player not melting when they are the level that Sinner is at. All right, let's go to quarter two. A player who have no concerns about him mentally melting. It's Carlos Alcaraz is the favorite, minus 210. Sebi Korda, 7-1. Jack Draper, 10-1. Karen Khachanov, who made a semi-final at the US Open recently, he is 20-1. It seems very improbable that Carlos Alcaraz will not be featuring in the semi-final of the US Open.
It does, but that said, I can't get to 250. That's a very, very favorable number for him. Q2 is pretty soft. None of these guys who you mentioned, Korda, Draper, Demonauer, Hurkacz, Khachanov, Shapovalov, none of them have shown you anywhere close to high enough quality tennis this year that Alcaraz is going to have to do much work to get to the semifinals here, but still the numbers wouldn't bear out minus 250. That's basically saying that he's going to be, minus 5,000 to minus 800 in every single match that he plays. And that's pretty aggressive pricing for best of five tennis and just in general, a little bit of a feisty first couple of matches here. So, I am at 54.4% chance that Alcaraz comes through and wins this quarter. So at price, I would be against it at 250. There is a little bit of concern among the tennis community that Alcaraz had sprained his ankle and canceled practice last week. And then you kind of review the video and it was virtually nothing. And I think ultimately he's going to have the best of the conditions here. We are seeing it play quite slowly so far in the early going, in qualifying last weekend in the early going. To this point, very, very, still humid air, and the court's surface itself, they've resurfaced it. They were trying to go for something faster, and they managed to make it slower, it feels like, which is wild. So far, if it plays that way and it continues to, be more like an Indian Wells type of court speed, that is exactly into Alcaraz's sweet spot. So I'm not going to bet against him at price, but boy, oh boy, is minus 250 pretty aggressive.
Okay, that makes sense. Quarter three, prices entering Monday. This is certainly the most wide open quarter just because it doesn't have one of the big three. It's got our only non-minus money favorite, and that is Sasha Zverev at plus 120. Not the people's favorite. Taylor Fritz, a bit more of the people's favorite at plus 600. Your man Holger Rune, 7-1. Matteo Berrettini, 8-1. And then Casper Ruud, finalist a couple of years ago, is 12-1. What's going on with Casper Ruud at the moment?
Well, he looked awful to start today, but then completely turned it around. He's had a weird summer. He picked up a very, very serious illness at the end of his French Open campaign, which kept him out of tennis for quite a while. And the little he's talked about it, it sounded basically like it kind of affected his preparation, it affected his practice, it affected his, not just his fitness, but his ability to even like lift weights and keep weight on and keep food down. So, he had a rough summer, and the fact that he was able to turn around a lackluster start against a qualifier who was playing really well, and then clean up in straight sets today was positive for him. He's going to have a tough test against the winner of the Gael Monfils Diego Sebastian Schwartzman match. Sebastian Schwartzman, by the way, if you didn't know, this is his last US Open, probably his last Grand Slam. He is, I believe, retiring at the end of this season. Really fun player from days when I originally started handicapping tennis. But don't think ultimately he'll be able to get by Monfils. Monfils Ruud, awesome. Quarter three in general, every second round match is going to be awesome. Like, there are so many really, really fun players in this quarter. And I think in general, hey, you want to talk about headlining match? Matteo Berrettini, who has been excellent on hard courts in his career and has made runs here at the US Open where I thought very realistically he could win, takes on Taylor Fritz in round two. Both players come through in straight sets today. Both look to be in form. I have some Taylor Fritz to win the quarter price because I basically was like, prove me wrong, Casper Ruud, that you're going to be able to be here in week two. His, so that to me, at least, it looked like Fritz, if he can get by Berrettini, was going to have a relatively clean path to a quarterfinal in Q3. And then section 6, which is the bottom half of Q3, is a murderer's row. Everybody in here has a pulse. You have lots of really good players playing well right now in this in the mix here. Lorenzo Musetti obviously could give Alexander Zverev a real test at the fourth round stage. Holger Rune could give Zverev a real test at the fourth round stage. I haven't given up on our guy Giovanni Pesci Pericard, even though he is down one set in the early going against Echeverry. But this is still an absolutely. I didn't even mention Nakashima, didn't mention Cranio Busta, haven't mentioned Kekmanovic, didn't mention Opelka. Like, there are just a lot of very, really, really fun and exciting players in that section that I think could make things tough for Zverev. So I'm against Zverev at price to win this quarter, and I'm on Taylor Fritz. I give Fritz a little bit better than a 16% chance to come through here. And I give Zverev only a 31% chance. So this one is the most wide open quarter by far.
Okay. I was talking to a mutual friend of ours about your boy Pericard today, and I was told that he has, I quote, the same lateral movement as Enes Kanter circa OKC.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Got the big serve, much like Enes Kanter did back in the day. Okay, that makes sense. Berrettini, I will always dislike at the US Open after he cost me dearly in 2022 when I believe he was favored in the quarterfinal against Casper Ruud and then just
Huge favorite,
completely
yeah.
imploded and lost somehow in straight sets. And Casper Ruud was so not harmless back then, but it was the type of thing where it's like, well, if Berrettini just wins one set, feels like he could win 3 straight, and he never won one set, goes down in straight sets. He has some demons that confront him sometimes, Matteo, as well as the afflictions that his body seems to be suffering every odd year. All right, quarter 4, Novak Djokovic, as he has done for decades now, anchoring this market minus 175, Rublev plus 550, Francis Tiafoe, former semi-finalist, 8-1, Ben Shelton 10-1. Any chance that Djokovic goes down here?
It's at the first time I saw this draw, I thought, boy, did they do him a solid. No one really stood off the page as could realistically go toe to toe with him in best of 5 tennis. The top seeded player in his subsection is Ben Shelton, who he handled comfortably last year in the semifinal. The next kind of intriguing player, maybe Francis Tiafoe, who, he made it to the finals of Cincinnati and in general plays his best tennis at this tournament in life, but still not anywhere close to the high enough ceiling to get that. To really challenge Djokovic at this tournament. So cooled off there. The one kind of interesting name that I'll point out, though, is he's going to have a tricky third round match with Alexei Popyrin. Popyrin is an Australian tennis player who is coming off of a career achievement. Won a Masters 1000 title in Canada. It was somewhat unexpected, but he backed up good performances with even better performances on his way to that title run, beating Andrei Rublev convincingly, I thought, in the final. And now Popyrin has an opportunity. He's already through the second round. He's going to have a relatively clean path to the third round here, where he will face Djokovic. Djokovic could have a little bit of a fight on his hands in the second round against Jan-Lenny Struff. And if he has any fatigue there, if he is not loving the conditions, which I don't think he ever really does in Flushing Meadows, then Popyrin could definitely give him a scare in the third round. Let's assume that Djokovic gets past Popyrin and makes it to the fourth round. I mean, there's no stopping him. He's going to the final. He is much better than anyone on the top half. I kind of laugh at the idea that Andrei Rublev is going to kind of get over his demons at the quarterfinal stage by beating Djokovic. I think that's a little bit ridiculous. And then the next best player on the top half, and Grigor Dimitrov, is also a guy who perennially underperforms at the slam level. So it's basically one match that Djokovic has to be sharp for to beat a coming on Alexei Popyrin, and he's clean through to the semifinals, in my opinion.
Okay, that makes sense. Djokovic coming off, obviously, momentous victory in Paris at the Olympics to kind of wash away the sour taste of the Wimbledon final. All right, fantasy football season just got better, $1 million better. Create or join a private Yahoo Fantasy League and enter the $1 million NBC sweepstakes, plus earn extra entries to win when players on your fantasy roster score a touchdown during an opening weekend game on NBC or Peacock. Download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to nbcsports.com/fantasymillion to learn more.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico, First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Okay, let's close out talking the outright market, the US Open men's side. Carlos Alcaraz is the favorite at plus 210, Djokovic plus 250, Sinner plus 350, Zverev plus 650, and then Medvedev, perhaps the last of the realistic candidates at 14-1. Who do you like in this one?
So my futures prices do have a distinct fall off after the top five, but not interested in Medvedev at 14-1. My fair price for him is 20-1. Not interested in Zverev at that price. My fair price for him is 19-1. So I'm a no on Zverev. I'm a no on yeah. That one's a big delta, and I think that's mostly because I don't think he should be minus money to win his quarter. I think the third quarter is going to be very competitive. The top three, I agree, are the top three, but I would have them in different order. I know Alcaraz has won 2 straight slams, and this would be a third straight. And I know he, of course, probably has captured a lot of support in best of 5 tennis, the way he is playing into kind of, being able to sustain the damage that it does to you physically over the balance of a 5-set match. He's proven he can do it, and so he definitely gets a ton of credit for me. But again, I don't think he should be minus 250 to get out of his quarter. And if he comes out of his quarter, I do think he's going to have to beat Sinner and Djokovic back to back in order to win this title. This is a lopsided draw where 2 of the 3 best players are on the top. So Alcaraz almost, I think is highly likely going to have to beat Sinner and Djokovic back to back. And the way that the matches were priced at, say, Roland Garros and Wimbledon between Alcaraz and Sinner, I think you can almost do better than plus 210 if you just parlay him in those 2 matches alone. And that avoids some of the kind of risk of getting involved a little bit too early with Alcaraz. The only reason to make a bet on Alcaraz at that price, if you are very sure he is ultimately going to be the guy here, would be as if more realistically, you think there's a path for Djokovic to crash out earlier, or if there's a path for Sinner not to get out of Q1. And again, I would make the most likely, those are the most likely 2 semifinalists that I can come up with. Sinner most likely, Djokovic second most likely. So I think Alcaraz is going to have to do it himself, and at that point you're going to be able to do better than plus 210 just at pricing those matches, I think. And for what it's worth, at the current data we've got, I would make Sinner a favorite over Alcaraz in the head-to-head in the semifinals. And I have Sinner's fair price at plus 205. I have Djokovic's fair price at plus 303. And I have Alcaraz at 486. So a little bit of a disagreement with me in the market. And apparently I'm a Sinner fan this week.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think it makes sense why he would perhaps be mispriced, just because people are very much buying into the steroids elements, and the fact that he is on the same side as Alcaraz, that hurts, and that is a real reason why he should be a little bit longer. Yeah, let's see him melt first before we price him that he's definitely going to melt, even if I have fears that he may melt in the end. Finding long shots in a world of best of 5 men's tennis, when you have 3 guys who are pretty clearly better than everyone else, is a difficult task, and not something that typically happens. But you do get your one Martin Del Potro sometimes come through and win random tournaments. If you had to bet on someone at price outside of those top 5 guys, is there anyone who leaps out as at all interesting?
The only big difference that I have in the long shots, and this is going to go contrary to something we just said out loud, and I know that, but I make Grigor Dimitrov closer to 35-1, not 125-1. So that number is very wrong as far as I can tell you. And unless my Grigor Dimitrov inputs and data are somehow, some way flawed, and I didn't catch the error, then that's the wrong price. And I haven't bet it yet. I'd like to, kind of get a sense of how some of these guys look in these conditions, because it is, again, playing more like a Indian Wells than a typical US Open so far from what I've seen. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't ever hurt to take a number like a plus 125 in case chaos does ensue. And again, like, he's got a soft section. He's going to have to go through Andrei Rublev in fourth round. He would have to go through Djokovic in the quarterfinal. He would then get the winner of Q3, which is the softer of the two semifinals, before playing only one of Sinner or Alcaraz, which I think is one of the reasons that my numbers tend to kind of be pretty favorable for Dimitrov. I would take a price on Dimitrov at plus 125 in a heartbeat before I would back a likes of a Rublev at 33. In a heartbeat before I would back the likes of a Tsitsipas at 66. In a heartbeat before I would back the likes of a Taylor Fritz even at 50-1, despite the fact that I bet Taylor Fritz to win Q3. I think 50-1 is just not nearly big enough. So yeah, that one, that's the one that stands out to me in the real long shots.
Yep, that makes sense. And I think that is the side of the draw that you'd want to be looking for a long shot, because you don't have to go through two of Sinner, Alcaraz, and Djokovic to be able to reach the final. You've just got to go through Djokovic at that point, and hopefully, he can get upset by a Popyrin or Tiafoe or Shelton with the home court advantage or something like that. Awesome. How's my boy AD F going, Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, who might be Dimitrov's opponent, that he's in that side of the draw.
Yeah, I would make ADF 2,380-1 to win this tournament. I make him 118-1 to win Q4. I don't know why, but his numbers really have drifted. I haven't seen much of him since the spring, and I think that's maybe just a sign of he hasn't been going especially deep into tournaments, so that's why I haven't seen as much of him. But yeah, he's the kind of guy that if you're gonna ever get interested in, it's at a best of 5 tournament, because he does tend to play his best tennis here. But yeah, looking at his recent results, he did not play Wimbledon, which I am assuming is because he picked up some sort of injury at Queens. He then was okay, not great at Atlanta, okay, not great at Washington, okay, although having a nice win over Daniel Medvedev in Canada, before ultimately losing in round 1 to Francis Tiafoe in Cincinnati. So not the most impressive form coming into this tournament, but nothing to tell you that he's likely to retire, despite the fact that 2 matches ago his loss to Matteo Arinaldi was a retirement. I think that's maybe why my numbers are cool on him.
Okay. Yeah. I started speaking more slowly as I mentioned him, just making sure that he wasn't eliminated already today.
He's not. He
is yet to play. I've always enjoyed his work, though perhaps not really going to be in contention to win Grand Slams anytime soon. All right. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those of you watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also, a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.